What do you think the biggest struggle men are dealing with today?
Society is it's difficult to navigate right now, man. You have a lot of mixed messages that I think do a disservice to men. Men are taught that they're less valuable than ever, that they don't have, women are trying to be fed this lie essentially that they don't need men, which is the destruction of family and society itself. And men need women and women need men. It's the polarity of the universe. It's not an accident. Like the very earth itself runs on polarity, and so do relationships and society. And so, I think that men are having a harder time than ever finding their value to the world. I think in days past, right, it was very obvious, like women stayed home and took care of the families and things like that. And the men went out and worked and created value. I'm not saying that was the right way to do it. I'm just saying it was much easier for men in that kind of a society for them to find their purpose. They knew if they went, worked hard, supported, created safety and stability for their family, then they would feel good about themselves. And I think anytime that you strip a human being of that purpose that they're driven to find, it makes it more difficult for them to find fulfillment and happiness. And so you got a lot of guys that are kind of floundering. They're trying to figure out like, well, what is my purpose? Why am I here? Who even depends on me? Who needs me? And how can I help other people? And if you haven't really done the work to search for that and find those answers, you start finding a lot of false purposes that maybe don't satisfy you or fulfill you. And so a lot of guys get sucked into this world of sports and entertainment and, politics and just things that don't truly have a whole lot of value. And, but it helps them feel connected. And so they put a lot of time and attention there. But I think that's the main thing that's going on right now. And so, it's more than ever. I think you have to really be very intentional about where you're putting your energy as a man to make sure that you're helping create those scenarios and situations where you're going to feel like a high value man and have a lot of purpose.
When men come to work with you, what do you think that they're looking for that they aren't even aware of that they're looking for? Of course, there's friendship, but there's so much more depth to your work that they may not even be aware of.
Yeah, a lot of guys will join my program and they say, this is the program I never knew that I needed all along. And what they're referring to, I think, in a lot of situations is people don't even know why they feel disconnected to other human beings. They don't know why. They have people in their life. They go to work. They have maybe some friends that, have some surface level of relationships with, and they don't even know what it is, but it's because they're not being seen. And so what I try to do is help men specifically to be seen and to be able to really shed those masks that we all carry, whether it's the mask of success or of accomplishment or mask of achievement, humor, sexuality, all these different ones that we wear. And when men really get seen for the first time and they get loved in that state, then they will never forget the people that love them under those conditions. And so what I try to do and what I try to help men do specifically is to be able to feel seen and be seen for the first time. And when that happens, a drastic change happens in their life and they feel connected like they never have before. Because what happens is when we're wearing these masks, we don't even know we're doing it, but we're showing a version of ourselves to others that we hope they accept. But even if they do accept it, we're deep down subconsciously, we know that they're only accepting that version that we gave them, not our full selves. So we can't truly feel the love that's being poured into us. It's like a bucket that has holes in it. And so when we take those masks off and we let ourselves be a little vulnerable, we let ourselves, show the sides of us that maybe aren't so pretty, and we're loved in that state, then all of a sudden we go, oh my gosh, I'm just lovable and I can be loved. And so they feel loved, a lot of them, and are seeing a lot of them for the first time in their lives.
Most people really don't have that place of for them to be vulnerable and share their fears, share what they're grateful for, what they are grateful for about themselves, their accomplishments, everything in between. And there was a growing up, your dad had told you something that you wrote on a hat of yours that stuck with you for such a long time. And I think most people are live through that idea of I'm not good enough. And it was kind of like a mentality that you took on in your life. When was the first time when you recognized that that wasn't the approach that you wanted to take and that you needed that love and transparency for yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting because almost every single guy that joins my program has the same lie they tell themselves. They say, if people knew who I really was, they wouldn't love me. right? And we all have this fear of not being enough or not being loved. It's actually, I learned this at a Tony Robbins event, but the two biggest fears that every human being has is that I'm not lovable and I'm not good enough. For me, when I was in 8th grade, my dad, I had an older brother that was the star MVP of the state in baseball for 2 years in a row, ended up playing college ball, my dad's favorite university. I mean, it was like, he got a lot of significance out of that. And, he wanted me to have that same experience, and he saw how much it meant to me. Baseball meant to me. And so he was trying to help me, but he wanted me to get held back a grade in school when I was in 8th grade so that I could be a star athlete. And I wasn't that good. I mean, I was a decent high school baseball player, basically. And it was interesting because he put a lot of pressure on me to do it. He'd heard of some other people across town that had done this, and they, ended up becoming star players and everything else. And eventually I told him, he was like, hey, you got to make a decision if you're going to do this. And I told him, I said, hey, I don't want to do this. I want to stay in the grade I'm in. I was a pretty smart kid. I had good friends that age. I had a crush that age. I just didn't want to get held back. And he looked me in the eyes and he said, okay, well, just so you know, you'll never play baseball again. You're not good enough. And all I heard, my 14-year-old brain heard is you're not good enough. And so I went on this mission to basically prove him wrong. And so I wrote under my hat. It was my baseball hat that I wore every single day for the next 4 years that said, you're not good enough. And I hadn't thought of that in 15, 20 years, right? But I know the power of words and affirmations and all these things that we tell ourselves now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I literally told myself that I'm not good enough. And I basically pounded that in my head for 4 years straight. And so I lived my life, my whole teens, 20s, and most of my 30s, living this lie of, hey, I'm not good enough. And so I would do a lot of behaviors that was trying to prove myself. And I can look back now and give that kid empathy, because it's like, how it came off was like, look how cool I am. Look at my stuff. Look how successful I am. Look at these girls I'm with. But what it was really all I was trying to say underneath was, hey, somebody please love me. I promise I'm good enough. And we all do this, right? And so for me, I hadn't thought of that in, again, almost 20 years. And I was having a really beautiful experience one night with some close friends. And I saw my hat that I wore. And as an adult that coaches people and has been studying all this for the last 15 years, I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And I realized it. And this voice came to me. I don't know what to call it, like a download. It wasn't like there was a human or anything, but it was like, hey, Jimmy, this has served you, but it no longer does. It's time to let it go. And in that moment, I knew exactly that I needed to let that go. And I was able to go through this process and kind of release my dad from that experience and myself. And it was really beautiful. It kind of started for me this journey of just loving myself and knowing that I am enough. And it was really difficult. And it's still, I still have moments where I'm like, I'm trying to get validated. I'm trying to prove myself. And it's always in all of us, but it's like, I'm very aware of it now. And so in that, I'm able to try to, get that love from within, as opposed to trying to get it from external sources, which will never help you feel down. I mean, I remember one time I went on a date, took her to a college football game during the day, posted it on Facebook. That night I took a different girl to the rodeo and posted it on Facebook. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? And I was just trying to get validated as much as I could and let people see that I was okay or that I was enough. And I look back now, and again, it's like, I kind of cringe a little bit because I know that, how that probably looked to people that could see through it. But it was, it was a really beautiful experience that helped me understand other men and this plight that we all go through. That's like, hey, because I've been to so many of these events and masterminds and conferences, seminars, coaching programs, and all these things. And it was cool because every time I'd show up, I hated how surface it was and how everybody would brag at the beginning. And so in my program, I was able to take my own experience and be like, well, I don't want people to feel like they have to prove themselves. And so the very first night we all get together, it's the very first thing we do in my program. I have everybody write a list of the 50 things that make them a badass. And then we read it out loud and we celebrate the person like they just won the Super Bowl. And it's a really cool experience because what it does is it helps every single person realize that they're good enough and they don't have to front. Nobody's bragging about their cars or their business or their success. We're all just in this thing together. And it's a way for me to use, the pain that I had or my own experience to help other men be able to break through that. So it's been a really cool thing in that way.